Have you ever wondered what would happen if Gojo Satoru was born in the Heian Era, the golden age of jujutsu with the strongest sorcerers in history, and most importantly in the same era and time period as Ryomen Sukuna, who was called the strongest in history after his reign and domination in this period? Most people believe Sukuna would win no matter the scenario, but if you remove Mahoraga and shift the entire fight into this era, the outcome of this legendary battle might actually flip. Let's start with the birth of Gojo, who let's assume was born around the same time as Sukuna, so they might not be much different in age, and there is no excuse for either of them being more experienced. Now, we know that as soon as Gojo was born in the modern era, the balance of power shifted completely, and this is going to be the case in this era as well, as from birth, he had the Six Eyes, one of the most broken abilities in the JJK verse. Sukuna, although was super strong as a kid, we still can't put him near or above Gojo as he had no broken ability yet. On top of that, this is before systems like organized hunting of Six Eyes users were established, so Gojo likely isn't targeted early on. Gojo was the strongest kid in the Heian Era, but things start to change as he grows up, as even though this era was filled with powerful sorcerers, they were still no match for Limitless and not much of a threat to Teen Gojo, and sorcerers only really grow when they are challenged, whereas Sukuna, who didn't have any big advantage, was growing and learning at a fast rate. At early teens, he was most likely weaker than Gojo until he reached adulthood. Gojo really became the strongest when he awakened. As a pre-awakened teen, Gojo was easily overwhelmed by Toji, so there is no doubt Sukuna could have done the same. But as soon as Gojo enters adulthood, he starts having trouble facing other sorcerers. He still might be stronger than most Heian Era sorcerers, but due to not being challenged much until his adulthood, and not even being awakened yet, he was still struggling against other special grade sorcerers. He deliberately trains and challenges the strongest sorcerers of the era, but his duty as a sorcerer will eventually lead him to Sukuna, as around this time, Sukuna leaves humanity and starts killing thousands of innocents and strong sorcerers with no one able to come close to challenging his reign. This is when Gojo decides to step up and fulfill his duty as a sorcerer by fighting and trying to eliminate Sukuna. Both have an epic fight, but Sukuna is much more versatile and stronger than Gojo, and in terms of knowledge, Sukuna might not be too far ahead, but due to his forearms and ability to chant and use hand signs mid-fight, this is only a mid-difficulty fight for him. Instead of Toji, here Sukuna is the one who kills Gojo and leaves his body thinking he finished the job. And this is where Gojo finally awakens and enters a new realm of power even above special grade sorcerers. Sukuna, who gets confused by this new awakened state of Gojo, is unable to comprehend his new realm of power and gets instantly hit with Hollow Purple, but recovers with Reverse Curse Technique and counterattacks with Dismantle, though Gojo has already learned Reverse Curse Technique through his awakening. Sukuna, who was bored fighting other sorcerers and was at first disappointed after easily killing Gojo in round 1, gets completely drawn in, and they both fight for hours before eventually realizing they are almost evenly matched, with Sukuna still having the edge as Gojo has just awakened his true powers. Sukuna backs off as he isn't the type to eliminate potential threats early. He enjoys strong opponents and lets them grow. Gojo, realizing he still needs to grow a lot, backs off as well, and they both decide to meet after a year in the same place after gaining more experience and being the best version of themselves. Now, Gojo in the most brutal era of sorcery grows very differently than modern era Gojo, with far more real combat experience, constant exposure to high-level techniques, and more knowledge to absorb. Sukuna, on the other hand, will also most likely grow a little stronger than his main timeline version, as he has been genuinely challenged for the first time in the Heian Era, where he was viewed as a natural disaster due to being that unbeatable. But domain expansion is where the scenario changes the most. In the main timeline Shinjuku Showdown, Gojo had a disadvantage as he didn't know how to use an open domain and could only use a closed domain, whereas Sukuna could do both, giving him a bigger range. But here in the Heian Era, open domains are already being used by top-tier sorcerers like Sukuna and Kenjaku, so it is entirely reasonable that Gojo learns to use an open domain as well, which will be a huge advantage for him given how broken his domain really is. Now, the advantage Sukuna once had is gone. Gojo's toolkit stays almost the same, with the exception of the open domain, but becomes more refined, and combined with Heian Era experience, his abilities are used at an even higher level. Now the day of the final showdown comes. Both sorcerers are the best version of themselves and have pushed their limits throughout the year. There is no doubt these two are stronger than the versions of Sukuna and Gojo at the Shinjuku Showdown, with both having similar experience and no knowledge gap. But one big difference here is Sukuna not having the 10 shadows, which was the sole reason he was able to counter Limitless in all of Gojo's curse techniques. Without the Divine General Mahoraga, he has no way of adapting to these attacks, and this is going to be a raw jujutsu fight without any cursed spirit help. As both of them enter the arena, we see Kenjaku, Tengen, and Yorozu alongside some other special grade sorcerers watching from the sideline as this historic battle unfolds. The moment they step onto the battlefield, Gojo wastes no time and instantly launches a hollow purple without giving Sukuna much time to think. But Sukuna still survives with some injuries, which he heals instantly with reverse curse technique and launches multiple dismantles at Gojo which do no damage and can't bypass infinity. This was just an opener, as Sukuna had already made a plan during that 1 year of training to get past Gojo's infinity. We see Gojo rush at Sukuna and start throwing hands, and Sukuna responds with domain amplification, temporarily neutralizing infinity to land hits. Here both of them are neck and neck, equally skilled in close combat and almost the same level of strength. Sukuna quickly uses Cleave when close to Gojo, which, although it can't get past infinity, pushes Gojo back from the impact, and using this chance, he activates Domain Amplification and mixes in Dismantle and Cleave whenever openings appear, damaging Gojo through amplification, which also has the big drawback of disabling Sukuna's own innate technique. This gives Gojo the chance to counter with blue and reversal red while maintaining his defense with infinity, creating a high-level trade-off battle between the two. Both staring at each other with excitement, take the fight to the next level, and use their domain expansions at the same time. But unlike the Shinjuku showdown, where Gojo lost the domain battle due to having a closed domain and had to suffer the shrine slashes, in this version of the fight, Gojo also has an open domain, so neither of them knows what the result of this clash between Infinite Void and Malevolent Shrine will be. As soon as they both release their domains, a massive clash erupts, destroying the surrounding area completely. Both of them possess two of the strongest domains to ever exist, and as their domains collide, both of them get heavily injured, with Sukuna exposed to infinite information overload, while Gojo gets deep cuts across his body from the shrine. However, deep cuts are not as much of an issue for Gojo as infinite information overload is for Sukuna, as it is doing serious damage to Sukuna's mind and making his domain expansion ability unstable. As they repeatedly clash domains, Sukuna can no longer freely expand, and seeing an opening, Sukuna uses domain amplification followed by Furnace on Gojo, canceling his infinity and landing an attack that took out both Mahoraga and Jogo in a single shot. Sukuna uses this chance to heal with reverse curse technique as well. This attack does serious damage to Gojo and burns his body, but he quickly recovers with reverse curse technique. Sukuna then brings out Kamutoke and Hiten, which were wielded side by side during the Heian Era to annihilate the northern Fujiwara clan's Sun, Moon, and Stars squad and 5 empty generals, including the Angel. Kamutoke lets Sukuna call down powerful lightning strikes which, although Gojo blocks with infinity, create constant distraction and allow Sukuna to close the distance and use domain amplification with Cleave to land real damage. But Gojo uses this close distance to start throwing a barrage of black flashes on Sukuna, which restores his efficiency and control while massively amplifying his cursed energy output. As Sukuna is thrown back by the black flashes, Gojo charges up the most powerful version of Hollow Purple and tears through half of Sukuna's body in the process, destroying the whole battlefield and catching some sorcerers on the sideline in the blast. At this stage, without 10 shadows and Mahoraga, Sukuna doesn't have a reliable answer to Gojo's infinity. Sukuna wipes the blood from his face, but this is the moment he fully locks in, realizing that even with domain amplification and higher cursed energy output, he still lacks a permanent answer to Satoru Gojo's infinity. Instead of rushing forward, Ryomen Sukuna steps back and begins chanting while forming hand signs, pushing his cursed energy output even higher. Rather than using his usual open domain, he modifies Malevolent Shrine into a compressed, barrier-like space that traps Gojo inside, forcing the fight into a confined environment where Sukuna can fully control the pressure. Inside, Sukuna alternates precisely between domain amplification and his slashing techniques, using amplification to bypass infinity during close combat and switching to Cleave and Dismantle as sure hit attacks, while Kamutoke adds constant lightning pressure. The constant switching creates a relentless rhythm that forces Gojo into continuous damage and healing, gradually overwhelming him and burning him out. As Sukuna closes the distance, his amplified output and precise timing give him the edge in hand-to-hand combat, while chanting at the same time keeps pushing his cursed energy output higher, maintaining constant pressure on Gojo. For a brief moment, it appears that Sukuna has found a winning condition, as Gojo is forced into non-stop reverse curse technique usage just to survive. However, under this extreme pressure, Gojo's focus sharpens. Instead of trying to block and heal everything, he deliberately allows certain attacks to land, conserving his output and fully concentrating on reading Sukuna's rhythm. Sukuna interprets this as weakness and commits entirely to offense, pushing for a decisive finish. That decision creates a critical opening. Gojo times Sukuna's rhythm perfectly and lands a black flash, instantly restoring his output and control, then chains multiple black flashes in succession, shifting the momentum as Sukuna struggles to maintain perfect domain amplification under the strain of high output, constant chanting, and close combat. In a brief moment of inconsistency, Infinity returns, and Gojo immediately creates space. Without wasting time, he compresses blue and red within the confined barrier and detonates a point-blank hollow purple before Sukuna can fully react. The enclosed space amplifies the impact, and the attack lands before Sukuna can properly reinforce or regenerate, dealing critical damage and collapsing the domain entirely. Sukuna is left severely weakened, his cursed energy output dropping as his regeneration fails to keep up. Gojo remains standing, heavily injured but still capable, and overwhelms Sukuna with repeated blasts of blue and red before a final hollow purple reduces him to nothing. Sukuna had the superior physique, not to mention his cursed energy output and capacity, which pushed Gojo into a near-losing position, but Gojo adapted faster in the final moment. Rather than overpowering Sukuna's strategy, he read through it and broke its timing. The fight ends as a razor-thin victory, but in this scenario, without Maharaga and with both fighters from the same time period, the honored one ultimately wins.